So today what we are going to do is we are going to scrap some information from one site, and we will take that information to the next site. And what we are going to do here is, for example, let's take this book. So we'll collect the name, then we will go to the next site and we will search for that book, and we will collect the information from here, and we will create one single output. Let's get started. So I do not want to focus a lot on the scrapping part, so I'm going to copy paste some of the code here, and just want to check my meters. Audio meters look okay. All right, so Scrapy Gen Spider, and let's call this Multisite, and the fourth parameter is going to be the domain, so start URL. So that's, I'm going to skip and just put an X, and let's open this up in Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to open one new window here, and let's open this Multisite, and it's opening in on the second monitor. So let me bring it up here, and all right, so let's go full screen and zoom in. So now, as you can see that the allowed domain has X, and start URL is http://x/. So this always creates a problem. So there is absolutely no point in giving the fourth argument with anything realistic. You have to come here and edit it anyway. So let's start with books to scrap. So I'm going to copy paste the URL. So this is our start URL. I'm going to comment out allowed domain for now. I'll show you how it can be useful later. So if we open this page here, and if we want to check, I've already created one XPath, so I'll directly just paste in that XPath and show you what it is doing. So Control F. So at this XPath, as you can see that it's simply looking for all H3, and then inside all H3 there is a tag, and this is going to select everything, and you can press enter to move forward or shift enter to move backward. So you're on the first one, shift enter to move to the last one. So this way you can quickly verify that your selector is working correctly. So what I'm going to do is, in the parse method, I'm just going to do something simple. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting all the links and storing it in a variable. And then I'm running a loop on all those links. And what I'm doing here is I'm calling response.url join, because the links that we get will be relative, and we want to convert them into absolute URLs. So this is the shortcut, and it works very well. Please do not and never use plus, do not use string concatenation or any kind of slicing or anything. Just use response.url join. It will take care of all the scenarios. I've not seen it failing anytime. And then we are sending the result to this parse book method. So this book method is going to run for each book. So let's say it comes here, and this is again actually a very simple site. It's not dynamic, so we can quickly look at the markup, and we can see what is the XPath or CSS selector that is required. So you can see that this is H1, and if I press F/H1, and you can see that there is exactly one H1, so it's not complicated at all. And let's take the price as well, and the price is very simple. It's price color. Not that simple, because if I just say dot price color, so now I'm creating a CSS selector. You can see that there are actually more than what we hope for. So there are more And there are 7 selectors which are being created, so we need to verify and add one more layer. So if we scroll up, now product page will not work. Now this product main, so this will work. So what we can do is actually we can look for product main, and inside that we'll look for price color. So note that there is a space here, so you can leave a space and it will select all the children and grandchildren and all those things. Shivraj, Twitter I am not planning to cover because they have an API and we are supposed to use that API. And senior coder, how to add data in database. Okay, all right, I'll make something using Scrapy and Selenium. Okay, so these are actually different topics, so I'll probably cover in different topics, different videos. Database I think I've already covered in one of the videos. Anyway, I'll double check, and if there is something interesting we can put them in database. Okay, all right. So we'll probably start with SQLite, which is inbuilt, and we can move on to the fancy databases. And Selenium, I've created some videos on Selenium isolated as in not including Scrapy. But there is a way to include Scrapy and Selenium, so that probably we can do. Yeah, but guys, thank you so much for your suggestions. The ideas are very important. So anyway, coming to a CSS selector. So CSS selector is another video that is lined up. So here I'm creating CSS selector. So I'm looking for product main class, and then I'm looking for all price colors. So if I just put a space, it will look for all the price color. So whether it is direct element inside that or multiple level nested, it will take care of it. If you put a greater than here, then it will only look for direct elements. Abu, Twitter, no. And Twitter I'm not going to cover. Database, yes, I will cover. Of course, if something changes in the future, we don't know. And have I covered Splash in detail? There is not much to talk about Splash. And by the way, I'm going to launch a new course very soon. If you're already registered in my free course, you will see a mail. So I'm going to make some changes to the course, and yeah, I'll send out the details on mail. So if you're not on the mailing list, you just join the free course and you will be on the mailing list, and it's all up to you. And I will continue to create quality videos on YouTube. So if you don't want to take any course, it's fine. On YouTube, you will have a lot of videos. The only difference between course and YouTube is that on YouTube, I just pick random topics and cover a few things. And if we go from course, then course has a flow and you can go back and forth and see what is there and not. But I never force anyone to purchase any course, and I never will. All right, so coming back to our selector. So we have the selector for price and the book name. So now I'm going to copy some code here. All right, so let's create this method, parse book. So now we have book name and price, and now once we have this information, now we are ready to send this information to our next method, and the next method is actually going to call this LibriVox. All right, so let's look at the first link and let's copy this link. Okay, copy link address, and I'm going to come here, and on the top, just to keep things simple, let's write something like libri_URL, and just pasting this URL, and let's look for the part where it is actually changing. So if you look carefully, you will see that whatever book you search, it goes to this parameter q. So Q equals this book name. So what we can do actually is we can create a Scrapy request using this URL, and we will just change the name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that book name so that I can build URL dynamically. All right. So yeah, I'll talk about proxies and Splash. So yeah, I love all these ideas. So what we are going to do is, now there are two ways. Let's say that we want to add the secret garden to this string. There are two ways. Number one is to use this plus, but this is not a good way. So the better way is to use these curly braces. And what we can do here is we can create the URL like this, a libri URL dot, and then we can call the format method, and here we can supply book name. So this is actually safer. If you have an integer, it will be converted into a string, and there are a lot of things which it can handle. And if there's someone is trying to mess up with your data, it's a very safe and nice way to do it. So this is the recommended practice to create a safe string concatenation. Okay, all right. So this way we can create the new URL. Okay, so now we have the new URL. We have the book name. Now how do we create? How do we create a request? All right. So it's a simple. The first part is simple. Yield scrapy.request, and the URL is going to be this one, right? So this is the URL. So this is the URL, and now there is one more thing we want to make sure. We want to make sure that if there are specific headers, because we remember that we saw that when we were looking at this was one XHR, right? And what we got in return was a JSON. So if this is not a normal scenario, right? So if it is not a normal scenario, that means there are certain headers which are being sent. So let's look at headers. And if we look at headers, so let's look at all the headers. Cookies is okay. We don't have to worry about cookies. So user agent, this is one thing. And this one is important. X requested with XML HTTP request. So only if this header is sent, then the server will know that, okay, this is an AJAX request and XHR request or AJAX request, same thing. So this is how it is, and the server has to return the JSON response. So this header is important. So let's set it. So what are the parameters that a request can accept? It will accept the URL. All right, it can accept headers. So headers is going to be a dictionary. It can accept callback. So see, in the tooltip we have all the options. So it can receive method, which is by default set to get, so we don't have to. Shivraj, Twitter I'm not going to talk about. It's better not to talk about Twitter and Facebook and all those social media. They have very strict policies against scrapping, and that is this area where I don't enter into. A rule of thumb is if a website already has a publicly accessible API, then it means that scrapping is not allowed. So coming back to our code, headers are set to none, so that we will supply. We don't have to worry about other things. And then take a note of this keyword CB KWRX. So this is something we are going to use. So headers, so let's put the header. So I'm going to do some copy paste here, but I think so far it should not be complicated. So we just have the headers, and there will be of course one callback method. So callback is going to be, let's say, self dot parse, and that the LibriVox site is for audiobooks, so let's call it parse audiobook. All right, and yeah, that's all. And now this method will create a request, and we can create this parse audiobook method, self and response, and right now I'm just going to say pass. So now at this point we can take two directions. Either we can look at this method and we can see how the response is available, or we can focus on the most important topic for today, which is passing the information to the next method. Now here you have two options. One is the traditional option, which is now not recommended, but still if you're looking at any of the old code, that is what you will see. So let me show you the older approach first. So instead of directly yielding it, all right. So the older approach is to use meta. All right. So you just create a dictionary with all the information that you want to pass. You want to pass book name. All right. So here is your book name. You want to pass price. All right. So you just need to create a key, and then all you have to do is pass in the actual value. And once you have this, so this actually can be anything, doesn't matter. This variable name can be anything, but what you need to make sure is when you're creating the request, you need to send meta equal to your meta values or whatever name you have chosen. All right, so format, everything looks okay. So what we have done actually is we are sending the information from this method in the meta keyword. And how do you read it in this one? So here, no change required directly. You just have to write, let's say, book name. Now here you will have this meta available as a dictionary, and you don't this is available in all callback methods. So meta is usually it's used for a lot of things, but we are using meta. Okay, fine. So let me show you meta dot get, because if we want to read dictionary values, we just read it like that, and that is our book name. So that's how we can get information from a meta. So it's actually response dot meta. Or did I spell it right? Yeah. So response dot meta. So this response dot meta is a dictionary, and here we can get this book name. So if you want to look into what is there, let's make use of inspect response. So not self, we have to pass in the response and then self. So this inspect response method has to be imported, and this one is inside scrapy.shell. Okay, so from scrapy, from scrapy.shell import inspect response, and here we are going to look at this response. Should be available now, even if I have made a typo. Well, this is one thing I don't like really about Visual Studio Code. This error which is reported by the linter, it takes time. PyCharm is superior that way. PyCharm gives you errors very quickly. So anyway, let's come here and run the spider. So Scrapy run spider and multisite. Let's see what we get. So it should, if everything is okay. So now see what it is doing right now is it's going through all the books, and for all books it has created the request. So response, so we have a response 200, and let's look at response dot meta. So now response.meta has some information. Now you can see that this book name and price is the information that we sent, right? So if we come back to the code, this meta book name and price is something that we sent, but meta has some other information as well, right? So this is some additional information which is inside meta. So yes, it can be used. So if we use this command, that response.meta.get book name, so of course it's just a dictionary and we should be able to get it like this, or using the square brackets convention. We will get it either way. But as you can see that meta is containing more information than what we sent. It means that meta is used internally for a lot of things. And what if we have a custom variable name a download timeout? We will end up overwriting that or messing up, or that will overwrite. I don't know which one will actually overwrite which one. But the lesson here is that meta is used for a lot of things, so probably this is not the best thing. So in one of the newer version of Scrapy, so I don't remember exactly which version it was, 1.8 or after that, there was something new which was introduced, and this was CB keyword arguments, right? So it's the same thing. Instead of meta, you are sending this a dictionary to CB keyword argument. But what changes is, let me show you by executing it. Okay, so let's limit this loop. So let's limit it to just 2. Right now, if I just do exit, it will keep on going for a lot of time. So let's close this. Let's go back to that. And this time what I'm going to do is, if I'm being too fast, I just did this slicing so that I get only 2 results. Okay, and in fact, let's do only 1. Let's start with that. And what we will do is, we will come here to the inspect response, right? We should come here and we should be able to examine. Now let's see what happens if I try to run this spider. So Scrapy run spider multisite, and let's see what happens. You saw that we have an error. Here we can see that there is this type error here, and if we scroll up, what is the type error? The parse audiobook got an unexpected keyword argument name book name. So you know what is happening right now? This code did not even execute. So it's a compilation problem. So why it is happening? To understand this, what we can do is we can go and have a quick look at the spider, this source code. So I'm just going to press Control and I'm going to look at the spider class. Okay. And what I'm looking for is, just let me show you this one, this parse method here. So parse has self and response and then star keyword arguments. And here we are writing parse audiobook self and response, but we have not written what are those additional keyword arguments. So what basically it means is that parse method or any callback method. So I hope you are already comfortable with the idea of the callback method. So the methods in Scrapy, they do not execute one by one. These methods are called when the response is available. So they are not executed in sequence, and that is actually the power of Scrapy. So what is happening here is we have multiple keyword arguments which we can write. And whenever we say CB keyword argument, what it does is whatever is the book name or price or whatever key values, dictionary keys. So this dictionary key has to be provided here. Now see, the signature itself has changed. Now why the signature has changed? Because we are sending additional keyword arguments. So we are sending book name and price. So here we have book name and price. If we change the key name to book, so this has to be changed to book. And now we can simply print the book and price. So let's come back to the terminal. And let's see what happens now. We have inspect response, so we should stop at that time, but we did a print just before that. So here we stopped at the inspect response, but the secret garden and then 15.08, this value is printed here. So there is no point executing this spider further for now. Just going to do exit. So what is important right now is to understand the concept that if you have to pass on multiple values, you can just write inside this this kind of structure and then send them in book and price and something like that. And for those of you who know how to use items, like if you're working with proper Scrapy structure, and let's say this, instead of this meta values, this is your item. Okay, so what you can do is actually in CB keyword arguments, you can send this complete, just like that you can send. So you can send item, an item like that. You can send the entire dictionary or entire object of whatever you are working with. So here now you have the item available. So then you can do your item dot get and then book name, and the same way we were doing with meta, because this item is a dictionary. So depending on how complex your project is, because sometimes there will be like lot of data which needs to be passed from one response, one callback method to the other. In this case we had only two, so we created keyword arguments. If you have a lot of data to be passed on, you can probably create a dictionary or a specific item class, and then you can send on that object completely all together in one go. So both the ways are valid depending on the complexity you can use. So meta, just keep it for reserved things. In fact, for example, if you want to use proxies, for example, there will be some like Scrapper API. I've already created one video on Scrapper API. So in that case, you just need to pass meta value and this proxy name. So there is a proxy middleware built inside Scrapy, so that will take care of it. So probably I'm going too out of the way, but the most important thing to understand here is don't use meta for sending custom headers, custom values. Use CB keyword arguments. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy paste a little bit of code, because that's the point of this session today. So the point of the okay, all right. So now we know that what we will get here in response is a JSON object. So what we are going to do is we can close this. Okay, so what we are going to do is, if we just call response.json. Now earlier we had to use response.text and then call the import JSON and then convert into JSON object. But in the newer version, I guess Scrapy 2.3, if I remember correctly, they introduced this JSON. This is directly built in. It will, if the response is JSON, it will directly convert this into data, into a JSON object. So by the way, JSON object is nothing. It will be either a dictionary or a list, depending on what is inside that data. So now it is not a string. And if we go back to LibriVox site, we can see that the key which contains the actual data is result. All right, so I'm skipping the error handling. So what I'm going to do now is this data, and what was the case, all small results. So this results, this will contain the actual markup. But now this markup is a string. So here comes another twist, right? So how do we select from this markup? So now this is where I say that learning beautiful soup is useless unless you have to modify other people's code. Absolutely useless to learn beautiful soup, because in beautiful soups you can create selectors from strings, but you can do that using Scrapy as well. So what you have to do actually, in case you are not getting my point, let me show you what I mean. So inspect response, let's put it back. So response and then self, and let's open the terminal, clear everything. So run spider and just give it a second. So the screen went blank for a moment, but now we are back, I hope. So if I just look for response.json, not Jones, JSON. So what we have is a dictionary, and here I can simply look for results, and we have all the results. Now we can spend some time on looking at this, but basically we can see that this is partial HTML which contains li. So all the list items which are displayed on this side, so these ones are li, and this is what is we have available. So what we can do as a very simple actually, so we can import the selector object. So from scrapy.selector, import selector with S capital. Now this selector object, we can create an instance here. All right, so selector, and this can take a direct text, and this is where we have all the text, right? And this is where we have the text. So if we open our terminal, and this is what we had, right? So if we look at the type of this, it's a string. And now what we are doing here is we are converting this string into Scrapy's selector object. So we can save it in any variable name, and then we have all the s.css and x.xpath and all those things which are available. So what I typically do is I save this output. So let's do the same thing on the console, and I'll show you my way of how to make sure that I'm creating the correct selectors. So here data is not defined because the data is response.json. Data is response.json. So now if you look at s, this is selector. So s.get s.data. Yeah. So if you look at this data, now it has covered it, surrounded this in HTML and body tags, but doesn't matter. We already have li class equal to catalog result and all that. So we can use selector dot let's say xpath, and we can look for all the li items. Just like that, we will have all li items returned, and then we can fine tune. And if you want to have a proper structure, then what you can do is you can take this data All right, so this data which contains the actual data, and if you look at the type of data, it's string, it's a dictionary. Okay, so we can call it a JSON, and we can import JSON, and then we can call a JSON dot dump s for string. So this will convert this string into this will convert this dictionary into a string, and then what we can do is we can open a temporary file. So with open any file name, doesn't matter. So this is libri.html, and this write mode is f, and f.write, and what do we want to write? We want to json.dump s for string, and then data, and close this. And now if everything is okay, we should have this libri.html. So we can open this. cdy and code. So now we have this open here, so we can format it and look at the exact structure. So right now I'm showing you a very zoomed out kind of view, zoomed in kind of view. So otherwise, so in fact, I took the whole thing. So what you can do actually is you can be very specific, and instead of taking the whole thing, let's do something like this. From data, you can just select the part which contains the HTML, so which is results. And now let's look at the same file. So I need to close it and open it again. So now we have a very clean HTML. So once we look at this HTML, we can create our selectors, and we can also look at what happens if there are results are not found. So this we can do very simple. Instead of secret garden, let's put something which we know that there will be no results. So what happens for those kind of scenario? See, no results found. So clear everything and then run it again. And let's look at the response. What do we have in the response? Okay, it's not actually. I need to do something so that it's. So right now when I refreshed, it actually sent a full request, and what I want is just the XML HTTP or asynchronous, this one. So we can see that the status is success, and inside results we don't have an HTML. What we have is no results found. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy paste the code which I wrote earlier, and I'll walk you through that code. So this is my, actually in this code you will see that I've done a lot of error handlings and all possible kind of scenario. So here I have the parse audiobook function. I've taken the data, and the first thing that I'm checking is whether the success, this key is containing the word success or not. If it is containing success, if it is not there, that means there is an error, and I'm directly yielding the book and price and audiobook availability is set to error, right? Now if it is success, so there are few more checks, so let's not go into that. So let's come here directly. So what if the results are available? So here I'm creating a selector, and here I've created one dictionary. So where I have the book, I have the price which I got from the previous method, and in the availability I have this value available, and I've created an empty list here. And then this list I am filling using this response which I got from this particular page. So these are my results, catalog results. Then I have the book, I have the download button span. So this is actually the size. So all this information is available here. So that is what I'm doing here. And let's do a quick run and let me show you in what ways you can use this information. So let's look at this information. So there are many different ways to, store this information and output this information. It completely depends on what you're looking for. So here, okay, this is the result. So what I'm going to do is actually, I just want to make sure that I'm not making any errors. So, and then I'm going to send this output into a JSON file. Yeah. So clear everything, and then let's send the output to, same, and JSON file. Okay. So let's call it multisite JSON. Why I'm showing you JSON? Because this is a good case for JSON, because there are indefinite number of audiobooks available for each book. Let's see what is inside that JSON. And let's format this. Now this is my output. So I just actually came up with a hypothetical scenario. So this particular book, The Secret Garden, is available for 15.08. Audiobooks are available, and these are the details of all those audiobooks. So this meta is actually the tags which are on LibriVox site. This is the download size, and these are all the options. Now, for example, this one doesn't have any audiobook. This one doesn't have any audiobook. This one has a few available audiobooks, which has some options, not all of them. So you can see that our code is completely dynamic, and it is able to get whatever information we want to show it. So that's all I wanted to show you today, the importance of CV keyword arguments. So that was the most important point I wanted to show you. This one, the CB keyword argument, how you can pass values using this. And another thing which I showed you is how you can create Scrapy selectors. And from the text, you can actually extract this information. So that's all for today, guys. We'll come up with some interesting video next time. Till that, have a nice day. Bye-bye.